There's an old truth that wealth reveals. You never truly know who loves you for yourself until you strip away everything that glitters. The mansion, the status, the name that opens doors, all of it can become a mask that hides people's real intentions. This is the story of a mother who understood that truth better than most. A woman who built an empire from nothing and watched his fortune attracted the wrong kind of attention to her son. She knew that finding genuine love in a world of opportunists required something radical, complete invisibility. So she disguised herself as the one person everyone overlooks, a cleaner. And in doing so, she discovered not just a wife for her son, but a truth about character that most people spend lifetimes trying to understand. What would you see if you stripped away all pretense? Who would you become if no one knew your name? Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Margaret Williams had spent 3 months in quiet contemplation, away from the legal empire she'd spent decades building. Her grandson, Daniel, was brilliant, a legal mind that could dissect the most complex cases with ease. He was set to inherit everything: the firm, the fortune, the legacy she'd carved from adversity. But Margaret carried a worry that kept her awake at night. Daniel's wealth made him a target. Women pursued him not for his character, but for his bank account. His handsome face and billionaire status made headlines, but few knew the man beneath the reputation. He'd learned to hide, to keep his personal life private, to protect himself from those who saw dollar signs instead of a human being. Margaret made a decision that would surprise everyone. She would return to the firm not as its revered founder, but as someone invisible, a cleaner, dressed in plain clothes, wearing a cheap watch, carrying herself with the quiet dignity of someone used to being overlooked. Her mission was twofold: to observe the company's true character when no one important was watching, and to find someone rare for her grandson, someone who would love Daniel for who he was, not what he had. In a world where wealth attracted wolves, Margaret was hunting for something far more valuable: integrity. Margaret entered the prestigious law firm on a Monday morning, mop in hand, her gray hair tied back simply. Most employees brushed past her without a glance, but a group of younger associates noticed her immediately. Specifically, the modest watch on her wrist. "Is that supposed to be a designer watch?" One woman laughed, loud enough for others to hear. "Look at the knockoff, trying to play dress-up with the rich folks." Her companions joined in, their mockery sharp and casual. Margaret stood quietly, observing each face, cataloging who laughed loudest, who looked uncomfortable, who said nothing. These moments revealed more than any interview ever could. When one woman stepped closer, her voice dripping with contempt, accusing Margaret of trying to belong somewhere above her station, a new voice cut through the cruelty. "That's enough." Elena Martinez stood at the corridor's edge, her posture calm but her eyes fierce. She was in her early 30s, striking not because of beauty alone, but because of presence, the kind that comes from conviction rather than confidence. She addressed the group with controlled firmness. "She's doing her job. What's your excuse for standing around bullying someone?" Elena's words were quiet, but they landed like stones in still water. "Don't you have actual work to do?" The group exchanged glances, their bravado deflating. They dispersed with muttered comments, but the damage to their character was already done. Elena turned to Margaret, her expression softening genuinely. "Are you all right? Some people mistake cruelty for strength. Don't let them get to you." Margaret studied the young attorney with the intensity of someone who'd spent a lifetime reading people. She saw past the professional exterior to something rare: a spine forged in adversity, a heart that hadn't hardened despite being broken. "Thank you, dear. That was kind," Margaret said softly. As Elena returned to her desk, Margaret whispered to herself with a knowing smile, "This one has the heart I've been searching for." Daniel entered the firm days later, dressed in simple clothes, introducing himself as Danny, a new intern eager to learn. The disguise was deliberate. He wanted to understand the company from the ground level, to see who led with character and who led with ego, to experience what life looked like for those without his last name's protection. Through Margaret's subtle orchestration, he was assigned to assist Elena on a complicated case. Their first meeting was professional, but something sparked immediately. Not attraction born from superficiality, but recognition of shared values. Elena's legal mind impressed him. Her arguments were precise, her research thorough, her dedication absolute. But what captured Daniel completely was her integrity. She refused to cut corners, even when it would have been easier. She defended positions because they were right, not because they were profitable. As days became weeks, their professional partnership evolved into friendship, then into something neither had anticipated. Late evenings became filled with conversations that wandered from case law to philosophy, from ambition to meaning. They laughed easily, worked seamlessly, and discovered in each other something both had stopped believing existed: genuine connection. Daniel fell quietly, completely, for the woman who saw him as simply Danny, an intern with potential, nothing more, nothing less. If you're still watching, take a second to like, share, and subscribe. It helps us keep bringing you powerful stories every week. But not everyone celebrated Elena's rising reputation. Vanessa Hart, a senior associate consumed by ambition, had watched Elena's success with growing resentment. When she noticed the connection forming between Elena and the intern, her jealousy crystallized into something dangerous. Vanessa orchestrated a careful trap. She tampered with critical documents that Elena and Daniel had prepared for a major client, planting errors designed to make them look incompetent. The goal was simple: public humiliation that would destroy Elena's credibility and eliminate her as competition. But Daniel's attention to detail caught the sabotage hours before the presentation. He corrected the documents, his quick thinking preventing disaster. When Vanessa realized her scheme had failed, her frustration boiled over. "You got lucky," she hissed at Elena in the break room, her voice sharp with barely concealed rage. "Everyone makes mistakes eventually. You're nothing special." Daniel had reached his limit. "What gives you the right to speak to anyone that way?" His voice was steady but firm. "Elena works harder than anyone here. Real leaders recognize talent. Insecure people try to tear it down." Vanessa laughed, a brittle, defensive sound, an intern defending his mentor. "How touching. You're both beneath me." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Maybe I'm just an intern, but I know that people who climb by stepping on others eventually run out of people willing to catch them when they fall." Margaret's health, or rather, her performance of declining health, became the catalyst that changed everything. She approached Elena one afternoon, her expression weary, her movements slower than usual. "My dear, time is catching up with me," Margaret said softly, taking Elena's hand. "Before I go, I need to see my grandson settled, married to someone worthy, someone like you." Elena was stunned. "Mrs. Williams, I appreciate that, but I'm not looking for marriage. I've been hurt too many times. I'm focusing on my career now." Margaret's eyes held compassion and determination. "I understand pain, child, but Danny lost his parents young. I raised him myself, and he's nothing like the men who hurt you. He would never betray you." Elena smiled politely, trying to deflect without causing offense. "I'll think about it." But Margaret was orchestrating something larger. She arranged for Daniel to appear, and the connection between them was undeniable. Elena felt something she'd suppressed, hope, and Daniel, watching her, felt the weight of his deception growing heavier with each passing moment. Pressure mounted from multiple directions. Elena's mother called constantly, asking when she'd meet this mysterious boyfriend, reminding her daughter that time was passing. Margaret's gentle insistence, combined with familial expectations, pushed Elena toward a decision she might not have made otherwise. But the truth was simpler than pressure. She loved him. She loved Danny's kindness, his integrity, the way he made her feel valued for who she was rather than what she could provide. They married in a simple ceremony at City Hall. It was intimate, beautiful in its lack of pretense. But Daniel carried a stone in his chest, the knowledge that Elena didn't know the full truth. He was terrified that when she discovered his real identity, she would feel betrayed, manipulated, fooled. "Grandmother, what if she leaves me when she finds out?" he confessed to Margaret that evening. Margaret patted his hand gently. "Love built on authentic connection survives revelation. Trust what you've built together." But Daniel remained unconvinced. Vanessa's jealousy had metastasized into something toxic. During a company-wide meeting, she stood with manufactured confidence and produced what appeared to be damning evidence. Emails suggesting Elena had been leaking confidential information to competitors. The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, shocked faces turning toward Elena. She sat frozen, her mind racing. The accusations were lies, but the fabricated proof looked convincing. "This kind of betrayal demands immediate action," Vanessa declared, her voice dripping with false righteousness. "Mr. Johnson himself must be informed." Elena felt her world crumbling. Her career, her reputation, everything she'd worked for was being dismantled by lies. She glanced toward Danny, who sat rigid, his fists clenched beneath the table, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. That night, passing by a conference room, Elena overheard something that would shatter everything she thought she knew. Through the partially open door, she recognized Danny's voice speaking with another man. "James, I can't continue this deception. Elena deserves the truth. She doesn't even know I'm Daniel Johnson, the actual CEO of this firm." Elena's breath caught. Time seemed to stop. Every piece suddenly fell into place. His insights, his confidence, Margaret's insistence on their marriage. He wasn't an intern. He was the billionaire heir everyone had been waiting to meet. Elena waited at their apartment, her emotions a storm of betrayal, confusion, and something else she couldn't quite name. Understanding, perhaps, or at least a desire for it. When Daniel arrived home, she didn't let him settle in. "I heard you today," she said quietly. "You're Daniel Johnson, the CEO, the heir. Everything was a lie." Daniel's face fell, genuine anguish crossing his features. "Elena, please let me explain. You married me without telling me who you were. You let me fall in love with someone who didn't exist." "That's not true," Daniel said desperately. "I tried to tell you before, but you didn't believe me. I was afraid that if you knew the truth, you'd think I was playing games. I loved you as Danny because that's who I really am beneath everything else. The wealth, the title, that's what people see. But you saw me, the real me." Elena's anger softened as she recognized the genuine pain in his eyes. "Why didn't you tell me before we married?" "Fear," he admitted simply. "Pure fear of losing you. I already loved you too much to risk that." His honesty broke through her defenses. "I need time to process this. But I'm not leaving. I love you too, whoever you are." Daniel ended his disguise the following morning. He returned to the firm as its rightful CEO, and Margaret shed her cleaner persona. The staff was shocked, then horrified as they realized how they treated both of them. During a company-wide meeting, Daniel stood before the assembled employees, his presence commanding, but not cruel. "Many of you know me as Danny, the intern. That was intentional. I wanted to see this company as it truly operates." He paused, letting the weight settle. "Elena Martinez, whom some of you have mocked and undermined, is not just an exceptional attorney. She's my wife." The silence was deafening. Apologies tumbled out, desperate and stumbling. Daniel raised his hand. "Your apologies mean nothing without changed behavior. Workplace harassment and bullying aren't just unethical, they're unacceptable. Learn from this, or leave." Vanessa and her accomplices were terminated immediately. Their schemes exposed, their reputations destroyed by their own actions. Elena stood beside her husband, addressing the room with grace. "This isn't about forgiveness. It's about understanding that how we treat people when we think no one important is watching reveals everything about our character." That evening, Daniel shared something Elena had forgotten. As teenagers, they'd met once. She defended him from bullies, declaring fiercely that she'd become a lawyer and hold them accountable. That moment had changed his life, inspired his career, shaped who he became. "You've been my inspiration since I was 15, Daniel said softly. "When I saw you at the firm, I knew I couldn't let you go again." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "I had no idea. Everything I built wanting to be worthy of the girl who taught me that courage matters more than comfort." 6 months later, they shared news with Margaret that made her weep with joy. They were expecting their first child, but beneath the happiness was a profound truth about their unconventional journey. Daniel's disguise had allowed Elena to see his character without Wolf's distortion. Her integrity had proven she loved the man, not the empire. In a world obsessed with appearances, they'd found something rare, love that survived revelation. Margaret watched them with satisfaction, knowing she'd secured more than the company's future. She'd secured a legacy of character, of love chosen for authenticity rather than advantage. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And tell us in the comments what part spoke to you the most. And if you thought this one was powerful, wait till you hear the next story we're working on. Remember, the truest measure of love isn't what it costs, but what it survives. And sometimes, the greatest disguises reveal the deepest truths.